It was a cold winter evening in the city. The streets were bustling with people heading home after a long day, but amidst the crowd, one man stood alone on a street corner, wrapped in layers of worn-out clothes. His face was weathered and tired, his eyes carrying the weight of countless struggles. This was Mark, a homeless man who had spent the last 5 years living on the streets, surviving by whatever means he could. He had no family left, and no one seemed to care. Mark's day-to-day life was a cycle of hunger, cold nights under the stars, and the occasional act of kindness from strangers. Some gave him a few coins, others a hot meal, but none ever stayed long enough to know his story. He had grown accustomed to being invisible, blending into the background of the city, just another forgotten soul. That evening, however, something unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up right in front of him, the engine humming softly in the quiet of the night. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was well-dressed in a sharp suit, with a friendly smile that contrasted sharply with the cold surroundings. The man approached Mark, who was sitting on the ground, his back against a brick wall, shivering in the chill. "Hey there," the man said, his voice warm. "I've been seeing you here every day for a while. How are you holding up?" Mark looked up, startled. It wasn't often that anyone took the time to acknowledge him. His first instinct was to turn away, to brush off the stranger as just another person who wouldn't understand. But something in the man's eyes made him pause. "I'm fine," Mark replied, his voice rough from years of neglect. "Just getting by." The man smiled again, crouching down to meet Mark's eyes. "You don't have to do this alone. I want to help." Mark blinked, unsure of what he had just heard. Who was this man? And why was he talking to him like this? The man introduced himself as James, a successful entrepreneur with a heart for helping those in need. He had built his fortune over the years, but despite his wealth, he never felt fulfilled. James had always wanted to make a real difference, and as he walked the city streets one evening, he had noticed Mark. Something about the homeless man caught his attention, not just his disheveled appearance, but the quiet sadness in his eyes that seemed to speak volumes. "I've been looking for a way to give back," James explained, sitting down beside Mark on the cold sidewalk. "And I think I've found my chance. I can't just give you a meal or some money and walk away. I want to do more." Mark, still confused by the situation, looked up at James, trying to process the sincerity in his words. He had heard empty promises before, from people who claimed to want to help but were gone the moment their charity was given. But there was something different about James. He seemed genuine, like he truly wanted to change Mark's life. James paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I have a house. It's empty, and I've been thinking a lot about it lately. I want you to have it. You deserve a fresh start." Mark's heart raced, and he couldn't quite understand what he was hearing. A house? A fresh start? It sounded too good to be true. "Why me?" Mark asked, his voice shaky with disbelief. James smiled softly. "Because you matter. You're not invisible to me, Mark. I know this might seem overwhelming, but I want you to know that I'm serious. I'm going to give you the keys to that house, and you can start over. You'll never have to worry about living on the streets again." Tears welled up in Mark's eyes, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the offer. A home? It had been so long since he had dreamed of anything like that. A roof over his head, warmth, comfort. But he had no idea how to accept such an incredible gesture. Was it real? Could someone like him really be deserving of such kindness? James reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a set of keys. He handed them to Mark, his expression serious. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. I'll help you get settled. The house is yours, Mark." Mark's hands trembled as he took the keys, his mind still trying to wrap around the enormity of the moment. He had been on the streets for so long, struggling to survive, and now, here he was, holding the key to a new life. "I don't know what to say," Mark whispered, his voice choked with emotion. James placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that this is the beginning of something new. We're going to make sure you have the support you need. You're not alone anymore." Mark looked down at the keys in his hand, the weight of them heavy but full of hope. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the spark of possibility. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions for Mark. The house James had promised him was nothing like he could have ever imagined. It was a cozy, two-bedroom home on a quiet street, surrounded by trees and greenery. The moment Mark walked through the front door, he was overcome with emotion. The warmth of the home wrapped around him like a comforting embrace, and he couldn't stop himself from breaking down. James had arranged for furniture, food, and basic necessities to be delivered, making sure that Mark had everything he needed to start fresh. It wasn't just a house, it was a new chance at life. For Mark, this was nothing short of a miracle. He had gone from a life of struggle, fear, and isolation to one of security, peace, and endless possibilities. As the days passed, Mark began to adjust to his new life. The first few nights were the hardest, his mind still haunted by the memories of life on the streets. But each morning he woke up in his own bed, feeling safe and warm. Slowly, he started to rebuild himself. James kept his promise, checking in regularly, offering support, and even helping Mark get a job at a local cafe. With a steady income, Mark was able to furnish his home, decorate the rooms, and add personal touches that made it truly feel like his own. He even started volunteering at a homeless shelter, helping others who were in the same position he had once been in. It wasn't just about receiving help, it was about giving back, and Mark felt an overwhelming sense of purpose in doing so. One evening, as Mark stood in his living room, looking out the window at the sunset, his phone rang. It was James. "I just wanted to check in," James said, his voice full of warmth. "How's everything going?" Mark smiled, his voice full of gratitude. "It's going better than I could have ever imagined. I have a job, I've made new friends, and this house, it's more than I could ever ask for. You've changed my life, James. I'll never be able to thank you enough." James was silent for a moment, clearly moved. "You don't have to thank me, Mark. Seeing you thriving like this is all the thanks I need. You've done all the hard work. I just gave you the opportunity." Tears filled Mark's eyes as he realized the full extent of the kindness that had been shown to him. For so long, he had felt like an invisible person, lost in the crowd, forgotten by the world. But James had seen him, truly seen him, and had given him the chance to be something more than his circumstances. As Mark stood there, looking at the keys to the home James had given him, he realized that they symbolized so much more than just a house. They represented hope, love, and the unbreakable bond between a stranger who cared and a man who had been given a second chance. Mark had a home. He had a future. And for the first time in years, he felt truly alive.